Come no closer.
The map. Give it to us.
Us.
Us. Us.
We interrupt this program to bring you...
All right, everybody, my name is Kevin.
My name is Adam.
And I'm Julie.
And we are the Real Movie Guys, and welcome back to another episode of The Real Review, the series where we review and discuss all your favorite movies and TV shows. On today's episode, we're taking a look at the season premiere of Ahsoka, Part 1, Master and Apprentice, and Part 2, Toil and Trouble. A valuable prisoner escapes New Republic custody, and a search for answers reunites two old friends. Okay, guys, long time in the making here. What I want to start out with first is, now, are any of you really familiar with Rebels? I know, Julie, you haven't really seen anything. Adam, have you seen much of Rebels, or are you familiar with that series?
I know a good bit of what happens in Rebels. I don't know a lot, or, everything, but I know a good bit.
Okay, so that's kind of where I want to start this review, because I think that's actually the most important thing before we even talk about these first two premiere episodes, which the reason I kind of thought we should do them together is because they kind of do feel like a part 1 and 2. I mean, they are labeled as such in the episode order, but truly, I think this kind of could have been one episode of information, and we could have just jumped right into the series. Nevertheless, now, what I kind of see from the start of this, and I think this is really going to divide fans, and this is kind of me talking to the audience, like, directly right now at this point, is if you saw Rebels, I think you're really going to enjoy Ahsoka, 100%. I think there's a lot of lore there. There's a lot of beats that take place right after the original Rebels series, and I think you're going to have a really good time. If you didn't watch Rebels, you're going to be a little lost, and it's going to be a little bit confusing, and you're going to just be like, who are these characters? Why do I care? But at the same time, I think the show is trying to ease people in. Adam, how did you feel about that? Because I think that's really my biggest point of contention before we even talk about the show itself.
Yeah, I'd say it really is. It's putting in the effort of trying to get people, because I'm sure they know that. Because Rebels was on what, Disney, right?
Yeah, it was on Disney. Yeah, Disney,
yeah. So I mean,
XD or whatever for a while. Yeah.
It's like adults typically aren't, like Star Wars fans aren't going to go out of their way and watch a show on Disney Channel.
Right.
So obviously they know what they're getting into, or I guess weren't getting into at that point.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm sure that's why they're trying to reach a wider audience with these characters. So I would say yes, they are trying to ease people into it.
Yeah, and do you think they do a good job at it? Because I could see some people just really being almost turned off a little bit by this series, just from the get-go. Because again, like, if you didn't tell me who Sabine was and who Hera, all these other people, like, I wouldn't even know. Even Ahsoka, to some extent, only had a few appearances in the Mandalorian show, if you've been following live action. What do you think that they're doing here? Do you think Dave Filoni, who's, the spear runner of this show, you think he's doing a good job with this?
I don't know. The way I immediately thought about it was when I was watching the first episode, it felt like a continuation of Rebels to a certain extent.
Right.
Which, if I didn't have any background, I would be much more lost than I actually was.
Right.
So I don't really know that they're doing a good job at it.
Okay, right, but they're doing a job at it.
Yes.
What's going to happen will happen. Now, Julie, for someone who has no context of Rebels whatsoever, how did you feel just in these first two episodes? In that, again, just jumping into this almost new Star Wars universe, I think would be considered for a lot of people at this point.
Overall, it didn't bother me too much. I feel like I was able to jump in for the most part and kind of like ride the wave. For me, I only really know about Ezra and what a big deal he was from you telling me, Kevin. So I almost wish like they did more, like, and Adam just said it's kind of like a continuation of Rebels. Like, I'm thinking maybe, I mean, all I know is something happened to him where he's now possibly in this, ether world, whatever. Maybe if they had done like a live action recreation of like that scene, maybe to start the episode and then like cut into it to like give people who haven't watched it more of a stake. Like, all I've seen of Ezra in this show is just this little stupid hologram of him like, it's like I don't care about him just right now.
You have no reason to, and the
I
characters.
have no reason, right?
There's
That's
no
what I'm
build
saying.
up,
So,
or there's nothing for it at that point.
yeah. So if they had done something, like I said, just recreating like a flashback scene or something, that could have given more stakes to like, oh, we do need to find Ezra, because I'm like, all right, well, who cares if we find Ezra or not? The other characters though, like I feel like I was able to like jump in and like get the gist of who they were. Kevin made a good point when we were talking beforehand, just saying like the original trilogy, like you're just thrown into a story, and you don't need any context. You kind of just go along with it, and then the pieces come into place. So I'm hoping that that's something that's going to happen.
And that's my biggest takeaway, I think, too, is like when I've watched the original trilogy, I'm not even talking the prequels, which we will talk about the prequels because I think there is something here between those two series. The original trilogy, 6, 7, and 8, I think you jump into that story because the information you're given is non-specific enough to where I can enjoy the story and you can build upon that in the storytelling. The problem with Ahsoka, I think, right away, and again, I think this is just what's going to alienate a lot of viewers, is the fact that it's very specific information that I feel like I should know. I don't know if you guys get that feeling too. Like, I should know who Ezra is. I should know who this Grand Admiral Thrawn is. Who, again, he's really scary, and you keep talking about him. What is he? He's like a guy in a ship who fly. I don't know. You know what I mean? I don't know who he is. I have no context if I'm someone who's never watched Rebels before. And, all these little moments, they're fun and cheeky like that, seeing Chopper and Hera's interactions and stuff like that. The mural, I think, is really, again, there's some really good fan service if you're into Rebels, but if you're not into that, I think you're going to lose something a little bit along the way. And even to some extent, even Clone Wars not knowing Ahsoka's story, because Ahsoka's story is very important to the show. It is the namesake of the show. But I would argue that I think this is more of what Dave Filoni at least is trying to go for here. Is I think this is the sequel to Rebels that he wanted to give us. Whether or not it was live action or animated, I don't know if it mattered to him as much, but this is his trilogy, quote unquote, you could say. And I think there's a lot of mirrors to that. I think fans are going to notice a lot of that. If you watch just the beginning of the show where we're introduced to the baddies, Dave Filoni did something really cool. He kind of inverted the original, the sequel trilogy, or the prequel trilogy, where Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon are breaking into the ship to have the negotiations in the beginning. Here he kind of did the inverse almost, right? He had the bad guys going into the ship and setting up the plot that way. There's a lot of really fun nods, and I think Dave Filoni, for the first time in a while, I could say since maybe watching the original season of Mandalorian, this feels like Star Wars. Do you guys agree with that? Like, this actually does feel like a Star Wars tale, maybe more so than even the sequel trilogy that we received. Adam, what do you think on that?
Yeah, it definitely felt like there's more passion here. Maybe it is because of, the characters. They came from Dave himself, but I don't know. It definitely felt more love went into it.
Yeah, and I think there's an ease of access there too, because I think this is a simpler story, which Star Wars, in all of its glory and everything, is a simple story relatively overall. It doesn't need to be this big, complicated narrative. You can almost kind of predict where it's going and what's going to happen, which again, I've said before, that's not always a bad thing. Is it a little disappointing here and there? Sure, but I still think it's enjoyable. Julie, what did you think of that? Do you think the narrative structure is a little better going into this series?
Definitely. There's more, like, right away, by the conclusion of these 2 episodes, there is that overarching goal plot for the rest of the season. There's still a lot of unknowns to see how certain things are going to play out, or who's going to play what role in this. But we have like a final destination in mind, and a goal where, if we're going back to the sequel trilogy, that was all over the place and kept changing movie by movie. And again, I like how it's building upon, which again, there might be more knowledge to it that I don't know, but it's building upon the lore of this universe, as opposed to just talking about like cloning Palpatine. There's actual, thought and care, shown and taken out.
Yeah, and I have to say, the first thing I think this show, we'll move into some of the other positive things here. In order to have a good series like this, a good hero-villain series, I think more so than the hero, you need a good villain. And this show is doing a phenomenal job at that already. Rest in peace, Ray Stevenson. It's really a shame. Him playing Balin, and he's only been on the screen for a little bit at this point. I already feel the menace. I feel the complexity in the character already. I'm really enjoying his antagonist approach along with his apprentice. I think there really is something special there. Even the lore stuff, I think they're adding in. Adam, what did you think of that? Again, we're getting some like the witch story and stuff like that, I think, which is really cool. I believe that was mentioned in Rebels and some of the extended lore with Star Wars, so I'm curious to see what direction that's going in.
Yeah, it's honestly, I was not expecting them to go right into that with this series, and I think it might be a nice change of pace for, the future of Star Wars, to be quite honest.
Right, I think so too, especially because, again, I feel like we haven't really had a villain recently. I can say Snoke and Kylo Ren were kind of let down villains. I don't know. Maybe that is a controversial take. I think especially Kylo Ren was a letdown villain, and just doing Palpatine again wasn't really the greatest idea. So now we're actually getting a new kind of villain introduced into the series, and even Mandalorian to some extent really didn't have this big overarching villain except for what's his name? Moff Gideon was like the big villain in that series, which I didn't even finish Mandalorian the last season, so, poo-poo on me because I kind of lost interest. But this is actually reinvigorating me. There's a great mystery, and Star Wars always has that big air of mystery to it, which is what I love. I want to see, if people can compare it to Star Trek in some ways where, you're ready to explore the great unknown, see what else is out there. That's what this series is kind of doing for me. Star Wars is kind of inheriting that aspect from Star Trek that I think a lot of people love, like what's up on the horizon, what's next. Again, maybe it is slightly predictable, but I do think it's enjoyable. So there is some things I think we should talk about that this show does that Star Wars that isn't so great, and I know Julie will be the first one to tell you at this point. The acting by far is god awfully stilted at times. And what do you think? Do you think it's purposeful? What do you think, Julie? Do you think that because again, I feel like at times when they're talking, and these are good actors and actresses. Rosario Dawson's a really good actress. She could definitely play off the scene and everything like that. Even Mary Elizabeth Winstead, who I think is a phenomenal actress as well. There's these actors that can really go into their roles, but they're just like, hey, what's going on? We're going to go infiltrate the rebels. Yeah, we should probably go do that. Okay. I'm not really enjoying the dialogue here. And I know I've defended it at times in the original Star Wars. We're like, oh, that's kind of what it is, but it is kind of noticeable.
It's hard. Like, I feel like for Rosario Dawson as Ahsoka, you could kind of play off the fact that, like, true Jedi are supposed to be very, like, stoic, and kind of removed from their emotions. So I'm like, all right, I give a pass. It doesn't really bother me too much. Mary Elizabeth Winstead is very flat. Even in scenes like when she's having that like little chase in the plane with Chopper, I feel like she's like, okay, Chopper, stop doing like, thanks, Chopper. Like, I don't know, like it needs to be more like high energy and intense.
Right.
The biggest offender by far is whoever plays Sabine. It is.
Yeah, Natasha Liu Bordizzo. Yeah.
And I wish I could remember the line because it was so cringe-inducing. It's whenever when we first see her and she's on the bike and the guy's like, oh, you need to pull over, you need to go to the thing. She says this one stupid, corny line, and the delivery is just absolutely awful. She's just, I don't know. I hate to be that way because she is like one of our protagonists, but she's just like, I'm an edgelord and I don't follow the rules, but I'm not even good at acting that way.
Right,
So,
and I do see where you're coming from, and as someone who's watched Rebels, I kind of know how the Sabine character is, and I have an idea of what to expect. Adam, was she what you expected? Because I think I am a little let down by her, to be honest, at least as far as right now.
Yeah, honestly, I was pretty let down with quite a few of the characters,
Right.
especially her, but Ahsoka too. Like, she just seems so much more stiff compared to like her Rebels or even her Clone Wars days, where she's just, I like the quips that she brought in those shows, but this one, she just seems so, stick in the mud.
Right, and I understand there's been a lot of drama going on in the story and stuff like that, but I don't think that kind of affects her character because she's seen a lot of stuff, and we've seen her be quippy and stuff before, like in previous Rebel outings and stuff like that. I expected just a little more personality. And do you think that's missing from all the characters, Adam, at least somewhat? Like, it seems like they're all missing, like, just a little bit of personality.
I think so in the first episode. The
Right.
second episode, I think it starts to, like, really pick up, I guess, and I'm interested to see where we'll go from there. But in the first episode, it's definitely a lot more flat.
Yeah, the first episode, I felt like they were just kind of dipping their toe into the water a little
Right.
bit, and they weren't maybe sure what direction we were going with the characters.
Yeah.
Because, again, I think that has a lot to do with the setup. Because, again, the reason also, too, for reviewing these first 2 episodes is they do feel very strongly interconnected, like they could have been one episode. There's a lot of setup that has to happen here in order for us to get into the story. You have to introduce all these new characters that already have pre-existing lore, which I think that's harder than introducing just brand new characters, because you already have something you have to stick to and explain to the audience somewhat. And then you have to explain the new story, the new crisis, the new MacGuffin that we have to grab, which, it's fine that we need to get it. I'm not saying that's an issue. I'm just saying I think the setup could have been a little cleaner, and maybe we could have gotten a little more from the characters. But the dialogue I feel like there's no excuse for it at times. Especially, like, I think it's towards the end of the first episode where Sabine is fighting Balin's apprentice. There they have a fight scene.
Shin Hati.
Yes, Shin Hati. No, I don't even know if they said her name. Whatever, doesn't even matter. Doesn't even matter. Whatever. They're going after her, and Huang, David Tennant's character, which he's probably like the best actor who has no presence in here at all. Thank God for David Tennant.
Voice acting.
Yeah, he just goes in.
Voice acting circles around all the live action actors.
Yeah, he goes in and tells Ahsoka, we have a problem. And there's like this really awkward scene where she like just spins around and like turns to him, and they're like just staring at him, and like, but they could have a little more urgency in that. Like, I don't know. It's things like that. Maybe there's just no urgency. Kind of like I think you were saying too, Julie, that there's no urgency to their dialogue.
Well, and then even it goes even beyond the acting, like plot predictability in a way. Like I hate, Ahsoka and Sabine are having the conversation about the device that will lead to Ezra. She goes, "Oh, can I take it?" And no, I'd rather you didn't. Blah blah. So of course she takes it, and then of course she loses it. It's just, I don't know. I hate stuff like that where it's just so predictable.
Yeah, I understand. And I think, again, I think there is a defense for it being there and it being fine, because it does feel like Star Wars. And maybe if we can forgive these first 2 episodes being more predictable, I think it will open up maybe some. I'm hoping, at least, let's just say that. I'm hoping it will open up something more in the future for us that we'll get in the next couple episodes. Let's talk action, because I think this is the first time we've really seen some true Star Wars action in quite a while. Mandalorian did deliver us all like the blaster fire, and I think everything we needed as far as that. We finally got some really solid lightsaber action in the series, and I gotta tell you guys, it did not disappoint me. I thought the fight scenes, especially in the opening the opening intro with Balin and his apprentice on the ship, was fantastic. It was terrifying. Even Sabine's fight for, we'll talk about the one moment that a lot of people are kind of raging about on the internet, but I think for the most part, I think the action was really solid there. Adam, what did you think? Is this kind of what you were looking for in like a Star Wars show? Because I think the first thing I could say I've wanted in Star Wars was lightsaber fights, and I'm not disappointed. I feel like we finally got it after how long has Disney had the series?
I will say that these fights that we saw make me excited for the rest of the show, because I'm assuming we're going to get more lightsaber fights, so It is very exciting.
Yeah, I think so. And I feel like it shouldn't have taken this long to get a lightsaber in a Star Wars show. Because, again, that's kind of like what Star Wars is known for. And, again, I don't think it's disappointing. How about you, Julie? Did you like the choreography and stuff? Sabine's choreography, regardless of her acting, I thought her choreography was actually really well done. They kind of blended, like, the Mandalorian, like, close combat along with the lightsaber battling. Again, it was a small snippet, but I thought it was a nice touch.
Yeah, I was really stoked with the lightsaber fights. I thought they were really cool. I even like that in the opening where Ahsoka's being cornered by the robots or the droids. And she does the thing where she cuts out the middle, a couple circles, and drops them down. Like, really interesting lightsaber play. So I'm very excited to see, more combat as we move forward.
Right, and I like how they in the second episode they teased this other apprentice. It seems like, I don't know if it is another Balin apprentice or she's an Inquisitor. I don't know who the character is necessarily, but I like there's a tease there of an unknown character that could be anybody really at this point, and how they relate to the whole Star Wars universe. And that battle was just what I wanted to. An Inquisitor fight is always really good, Obi-Wan did a decentish job with some of its Star Wars lightsaber battles, but this show's really showing it in knows action. Again, Dave Filoni, I think he really knows what he wants in the camera. But the big contention here, and I'm curious to you guys if it is even an issue. In the first episode, Sabine has her first fight. We find out that she was Force sensitive, even though I think in Rebels they said she was never Force sensitive. I'm pretty sure that's a huge plot hole, and I don't know if they'll ever address it. Adam shaking his head yes, and he looks really agitated by it. I know that was a big thing, so whatever, regardless, we'll put that to the side now. Sabine's fighting the Balin Apprentice, and she is stabbed with a lightsaber, and then wakes up in the second episode, barely an inconvenience, absolutely fine with a little hole in her side. Now, from what I know, lightsabers do some pretty terrible damage to you when you get, cut, stabbed, whatever the case is. Adam, what did you think? Did it bother you that she was like absolutely fine next episode? Because that seems to be a huge contention with this series already.
I need redemption for Qui-Gon. He was stabbed too.
Yeah.
And he died.
He died. He fell right over. Barely put up a fight.
Yeah. And then this chick, she's just like, oh, well, shake it off.
Well, maybe the laser beam.
I'm going to hack into the bomb. Never know.
Yeah. Maybe the laser beam didn't hit her vital organs.
Wow, yeah, the lightsaber like curved around it.
Yeah, you sure about that?
It hit her gallbladder and her appendix.
There's no lung right there? He didn't pierce a lung? I don't know. Whatever. So what do you think? Do you think it's an issue, or you think it's just Star Wars storytelling? Move on from it.
I'll get over it, I think.
Okay. All right. I was just curious because, again, it seems to be a big piece of contention.
I know.
And I think there is some fair reasoning to it, because when you see a lightsaber and you're hit by a lightsaber, it should be kind of like the end-all be-all. That is the weapon of the Jedi. It is supposed to be one of the most dangerous weapons that not a normal person can handle. And if you get hit by it, I feel like that should be almost game over for you at that point.
I mean, people are losing limbs.
Yeah,
that's pretty considerable.
Not Mandalorian Jedi, apparently.
I guess so.
I guess not. Julie, what did you think? Was that disappointing to you that she was fine? And, would you have done that?
Yeah. No, I don't know. Maybe let her lose a hand or something. Like, well, it's too much like the original, but you have a beam of light going through you. It's not gonna take out some, important internal organs. But whatever. It's science.
I don't know. I think the issue is because they ended the first episode like, oh no, she's stabbed, and then literally, she's back out.
Oh, she's fine.
She's
it was
fine.
It wasn't even like a day. I don't.
No.
I really don't know. I don't know. Maybe a day, right? I don't even know. But it
wasn't that long.
No, it wasn't that long. And again, I think you could have done that better. I think there's a million ways you could have done that. Even Ahsoka's fight in the second episode, I think, is just the better way, where they just get away. Right, the fight just ends and they move on from it. I think that would have been fine here. Maybe like she pushes Sabine into the wall and rubble falls on top of her, and then they get away that way. Like, I don't think you needed to go that ham right now on the character. And now it already shows she has some kind of like protection. She has plot armor, as we would call it in the series, and that's kind of disappointing. I don't know if that was the move. I don't think personally it was the move, so I understand people being upset by it, but I don't know. I just was curious what you guys thought on it. But one of the things I will say too is, for this show being called Ahsoka, I feel like she's really not in the show that much overall.
She's like Sabine.
Yeah, I mean, it really is. Again, I think like we said earlier, this really does feel like just Rebels, the continuation. I don't know if really Ahsoka was maybe just the way to get it greenlit and to move it forward. But I am curious about her character. I think they do have a lot of things that they do have to kind of get over with. Rosario Dawson, again, does a good job as Ahsoka, and I think there are a lot of scenes, especially now with her being more in the master role, where she was kind of always the apprentice or the outsider. I think we could have some fun interactions with her and Sabine. But again, it's up to really how Dave Filoni's going to run this series. What do you think, Adam? Do you have any kind of predictions for the series, anything like that going forward, just based on what you've seen so far?
I think it's going to tie directly into the events of the Star Wars video game, the Jedi Fallen Order.
Okay. I don't know. I think
maybe that's what I want, I guess.
I think there is credence to that. It seems like they've been hinting at little things here and there with some of the characters that they've shown. The Inquisitor is very similar to one of the second sisters and stuff like that. So there is something there, I think, for sure. And I would like that. I would actually welcome that.
I would too.
I've heard rumors, and I don't know if this is true. I'm sure people will comment in the comments below about time travel being involved in this, because that is kind of what happened with Rebels towards the end of it. For those of the uninitiated, they've been rumoring it for years. They want to rewrite the sequel trilogy. I don't know if we're gonna go that far into this whole mess, but Who's to say? I mean, maybe we could fix some problems there. How about you, Julie? You have any kind of predictions or anything like that?
I hope it connects to the game. Again, I wouldn't have had any, connection to it, but I do like the actor who plays the lead in those games. And for me, it's a shame to not bring him physically into the Star Wars universe. So I think that's just an opportunity that's, inevitable.
Yeah, no, I'd agree. But again, I will say this. At least finally we have something that feels like Star Wars, has a little bit of mystery to it, and, something I can kind of look forward to. I will say Obi-Wan wasn't something I necessarily enjoyed with all its history rewriting and whatnot, and regardless to that, it just wasn't that great of a show, I feel like, overall. Mandalorian, like I said before, I haven't finished the most recent season because I just kind of lost interest. Andor, I didn't watch. I'm sure that's actually pretty good, though, so I probably should go watch that. But again, that all being said, I'm excited for what's to come. I think there is something to look forward to. And with that being said, I think we're ready to give our final scores. I'm going to give Ahsoka Part 1 and Part 2 an 8.3 out of 10.
Get RD3 to scan these imposters for identification.
Allow me to show you our identification. You're right about one thing, Captain. We are no Jedi.
I think there's a lot of good stuff here. I don't think this is the best showing Star Wars has ever had, but it's a good start. I will say this. I think Dave Filoni goes for a lot of what in tone as adjacent to the prequel trilogy, and you can kind of feel that here with some of the stilted acting and some of the scenery, the setup. I mean, a lot of the setup in this first 2 episodes is directly ripped from the prequel trilogy, from the bad guys entering a ship and then like the droid finding them and them getting ambushed. You could tell Dave Filoni loves Star Wars, and I just hope that's enough to carry the series because I'm really curious to see what happens. Again, I have to tell you though, if you have never seen Rebels, I'd recommend maybe just looking up a YouTube video and trying to see like maybe the back history of it before jumping into Ahsoka. Otherwise, you're going to be a little bit lost. I hope Dave Filoni can kind of give us something maybe to help those people that haven't seen Rebels, to give them just a little bit more context as to why they should care. But Ahsoka, I think it's off to a great start, and I really can only hope it's going to get better from here, which I think there is a good case for that. Adam, how about you? What do you think?
I am going to give the Ahsoka Part 1 and Part 2 premiere, I'm going to give it an 8. I think there's a lot of potential here. I'm probably more interested in the Star Wars stories than I have been in a while. And I think it's already at least a step in the right direction.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of what we can ask for. I think Dave Filoni has a lot on his plate in order to kind of continue on the series and re-engage Star Wars fans and new fans alike. I do think the new fans are somewhat being a little bit alienated, but again, hopefully, I think there is time to fix that and to bring some new fans into the fold, and then of course give the seasoned fans give us something to really chomp our teeth into. I think. Julie, how about you? What do you think on this one?
I'm going to be giving Ahsoka episodes 1 and 2 7.8 out of 10.
We've been looking for this. That's too bad.
I think that's just me being kind of like you said, that alienated fan base that doesn't have the Rebels background. So I don't have like the stakes into it that other people do. I am intrigued. I'm very curious to see where this goes. I like the 2 main villains, so I'm curious to see them encounter, Ahsoka and friends. But for me, the reason I couldn't even bring it to an 8 is I just found Sabine so damn unlikable. I'm going to have to get over it, but it was just almost unbearable at times. And that I'm being hypercritical. I know I am, but she just really bothered me.
I think we should name the show Ahsoka and Friends. I think that's really what
I like Ahsoka and Friends. That's what it is to me.
I love that.
I think that's a better title than just Ahsoka. You know, I'm not going to lie to you, but yeah, I can 100% agree with that score. Again, if you're someone who's never heard of Rebels or any of these characters, like, why should you care? And the show's not giving you enough reason yet to understand why you should care. So we can only hope that, again, strong writing can fix this problem, which, you know, again, we're in a society where sometimes we rush because we want answers right away on things.
Yeah.
And maybe we can be rewarded somewhere down the line. Like, tell us who the hell Ezra is. Tell us who the hell
that would
Thrawn
sell it for
is.
me.
You know,
That would, I think if I had a connection to Ezra, I would be so much more invested in this story.
especially because Ezra's story seems to tie so much into Sabine's story. I think we need to make sure we understand who that character is. If new fans and even original fans need to have a better understanding of what's going on in the story. But time will tell. We got 8 episodes this season, so hopefully within those 8 episodes, Dave Filoni can give us something memorable for Star Wars. But again, I want to thank you guys all so much for joining us for this episode of The Real Review. My name's Kevin. That's Adam and Julie. We are The Real Movie Guys. Real guys, real movies, real thoughts. We'll catch you next time.
If you guys like what you've seen here today, consider giving this video a like and leaving your thoughts in the comments below. If you want to stay up to date with everything Real Movie Guys related, make sure to hit that subscribe button and check us out on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. And don't forget, all you audio listeners at home, we are available on many podcasting platforms. Just search The Real Movie Guys, you should pop right up. Thank you again all so much for joining us on this episode of The Real Review. We are The Real Movie Guys. Real guys, real movies, real thoughts. Catch you next time.